Welcome to episode 2 of what we have dubbed the ISO bar, just four meteorologists hanging out around the bar. And in our case, of course, it has to be an ISO bar because everything must be a weather or meteorological pun. We have had an interesting month or so in between these episodes where we have had a wide range of fascinating events. We can start, of course, with the most recent tornado outbreak, and we may as well go up to Minnesota first because you were the first to see things pop on that night.
Yeah, first into the show, and just as an aside, we were going to do this talk last week, and then the SPC forecast came out, and we were all like, "Yeah, we should probably get away from that." But we were first in line there. The tornado watch popped at around 12:40, 12:45 in the afternoon, and our tornado warning started rolling fast and furious. It was a day. By the time we got through it, I was on the air for 4 straight hours. You know what is we call it wall-to-wall coverage. And we actually ended up with a Doppler indicated tornado warning for downtown Minneapolis. And I was on the air using a velocity scope on the storm. And I actually said out loud, "I don't like this. I'm noticing the couplet beginning to tighten." And about 4 minutes later, the Weather Service issued a tornado warning. And it's pretty rare that we end up with a tornado warning in the heart of the metro. We got 3.5 million people here. And I think that's the one thing when you get through a day like that, that's right in the middle of that outbreak, that I think, the sirens go off in downtown. Your phone starts going crazy because people are calling. We all get through this, right? You're on the air and you can see your phone on the counter in the weather center and it's buzzing and people are trying to get a hold of you. And so, yeah, it was a busy day. We ended up with 8 confirmed tornadoes, 3 just about 17 miles to the east of downtown St. Paul, the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So an extremely busy weather day here. And as I'll do right now, we go with the storms in our area. And I hand off to you, Rob, because you were next in line.
Yeah, we definitely took things right after you, and it wasn't as long a duration event for us. We definitely had the wall-to-wall coverage. We were probably on for about 2 hours straight, give or take. Had a significant tornado outbreak in our immediate viewing area and throughout the state of Wisconsin as well. And some of the higher rankings as well. Once the surveys were done with the local crews, we had a couple of EF2s in the area, which isn't that common. Typically, EF0, EF1, but to get a couple of EF2s in the same outbreak was definitely a substantial storm system. And then at one point, every single county in our viewing area was under some level of warning, either severe thunderstorm warning or the tornado warnings that were in place. And that covers, of course, all of South Central and Southeastern Wisconsin. So that kept us incredibly busy. And then, just as I thought things were going to start to wind down, it picks back up again, and that's where we kind of kick it over to Emily.
We were really lucky here in the Chicago area. So we had some thunderstorm activity, but it really was not that bad here. All of the tornado warnings that were issued were outside of our warning area. So for us, it was a quieter night as far as the tornado warnings go. But we had some stronger storms rolling through for sure. We had, of course, some heavy downpours, but really, we were lucky. We had nothing really notable, no major damage coming out of those storms. So we were lucky around here. It was a calmer day than what we were preparing for, which is, that's always a good thing. We like those days.
We like that as a win for sure. Now, this isn't exactly in your backyard of Detroit, but I remember as those storms went across the lake, all of a sudden tornado warning in Muskegon, Michigan, which you don't see a lot.
Yes, it was active crossing the lake. Now, there are times when the storms weaken as they cross the lakes, but the instability was pretty high. I'm an old school guy, and the lifted index was -12 here in Detroit between 0Z and 6Z. So it didn't surprise me that they made it across Lake Michigan, and then they put the watch out for our area at about 11:15 p.m. So it was late. And then our first tornado warning in Livingston County, west of Detroit, was right at midnight. So, sirens are going off at midnight. As you three know, every event has its own personality, its own flavor. And, when sirens are going off at midnight, it creates another level of excitement. And Alan Longstreet, our morning guy, he came in at about 11:30. So he and I did tag team action from midnight to about 1:30. So we were on for 90 minutes. We had 4 tornado warnings in our ADI in our viewing area, and then we actually had one confirmed tornado in Livingston County. So it was busy. Thankfully, little damage. There were not a lot of power outages, but it was pretty impressive to watch on radar. Some decent rotation, even the late hour, that it was still very interesting.
Now, Emily, you kind of said that it was a bit easier, but of course, then you had something interesting. A second only ever dust storm warning?
Yes, and let me tell you, it was so wild seeing this plume of smoke or of dust coming into the city of Chicago. So I live in the downtown area, and to see it coming over the buildings was had that almost apocalyptic feel to it, because one, we're not used to seeing that, right? So that's a rare thing to see here. It was only the second time the Chicago National Weather Service has ever issued a dust storm warning, but it was actually the very first time that one was issued for Chicago. But with that said, we haven't always had warnings for events like this, right? So there has been records found that we actually had a similar event during the time of the Dust Bowl. So back in the 1930s, there was an event that did hit the downtown Chicago area that was similar in magnitude. But up until recently, this was the only one that has even come through Chicago since 1985, and that one only brought the visibility down to about 4 miles, which in comparison to what we just had last week, it was nothing. Last week we were down to about a 1/4 mile to near zero visibility. So it was really impactful for our entire area. And it wasn't just Chicago, it was all of Chicagoland that experienced it. So it was really an interesting thing to track from the south suburbs and then all the way up through our viewing area.
Right, and some fascinating pictures and video of that as well.
Mhm.
And thanks to your viewers for sharing those. And it's been an interesting spring. We're about to wrap that up and get into meteorological summer in pretty short order here. We've been interesting because, there have been patches that were dry and then there were patches that were wet. And we're certainly, at least in my area, ending on a wet note. How are things up in Minnesota? It's been a soggy couple of days here.
Yeah, the last couple of days, absolutely. Yesterday, rainfall totals for the 24-hour period were anywhere between 1.5 inches and 4.5 inches in the metro proper. So, a boatload of rain, pardon the cliche. But prior to that, we've had the largest wildfire burning in the lower 48 for the last 2 weeks. And it's some folks will look at it and call it the North Shore. It's actually just north of the North Shore. Here we call it the Arrowhead or the Northland, and it's been burning just off to the north and east of Duluth. At one point, we were over 34,000 acres. It's called the Brimson Complex Fire, burning in a magnificent old growth forest. Old growth forests, although magnificent, also provide plenty of fuel, considering most of them are evergreens. So we did finally get some rain up there. We had some higher relative humidities, knock down the explosive nature of a fire that big. 2 of the smaller fires are now 95% contained. Great news, right? But the Jenkins fire, which is central and northern St. Louis County, so off to the northeast of Duluth, is at around 40% containment right now. The big story for us was how dry it was and how windy it's been. And man, that wind was like a hairdryer, constantly wicking what little moisture we had completely away. So, in true meteorological fashion, we got a little too much yesterday, a little too quick. I think a lot of people's patience were tried. We had people call in sick to the station, flooded basements. Thankfully, every once in a while, I maybe hear it every 5 years because my house is a walkout, so we're built into a hill. But yesterday, the sump pump was going. Two
Kicked
things.
in.
It was nice to hear it working. And
Gotta
secondly,
test
no
those
no
things.
water in my basement. But yeah, think about that. Some places in the Twin Cities picked up over 4.5 inches of rain in less than 24 hours.
That's a lot of rain, and I'm glad you bring up the wind because Rich and Emily, maybe you should jump in on this too if you can. I have had more viewer questions about the wind of
Yep.
late than I have had in my 20 years here in Wisconsin. And at the end of the day, spring, summer, the shoulder seasons tend to be windier. As we get into fall, it'll pick up again, right? But this has been a windy stretch. Same in Michigan, and of course, the Windy City, right, Emily?
Yeah, it's absolutely been very windy here. And I will say that, over the last couple of months, I think that has been the number one viewer question, just like you were
Mm,
mentioning. It
yeah.
has been so windy. And you know what everyone says? They're always like, oh, it's the Windy City. It's always windy here. But fun fact, by the way, that's not why we're called the Windy City. it's actually because of the windy politicians that I got its name. But regardless, it's been very windy across the Chicagoland area. It seems like every single day we're at least getting wind gusts as high as about 20 to 25 miles per hour. But recently we've had several days in a row of wind gusts as high as about 30 to 45 miles per hour, just depending. We're kind of getting those rogue wind gusts that are much higher.
Emily, I was going to describe something and you're going to know it well. There are parts of St. Clair County, which is up along the St. Clair River, and there's a lot of agricultural land and state land. And so in the last few weeks, we've had these giant plumes of smoke with the controlled burns that they do on both the U.S. and the Canadian side of the border. But even from our tower cam here in Southfield, we can see all the way up into St. Clair County with those great plumes of smoke. And, we've had some rain lately, but a couple of weeks ago, I mean, it was hard to miss these plumes of smoke right along the U.S.-Canadian border. So not uncommon. They do controlled burns, but some of the burns were, as a result of sparks or a truck or a train. And we do get that here from time to time. It's an interesting thing that happens down here in this part of the state.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, with the wind, of course, carrying that wildfire smoke just a little bit farther. And it has been an interesting scenario with this setup this spring. We've just had much deeper lows and stronger highs, and just have really had that tight pressure gradient seemingly day after day after day. So it's not surprising that the viewers have picked up on that. And it'll be interesting to watch if this becomes sort of a pattern. I was speaking with a climatologist recently, and as we look at the evolution of climate change and we get stronger, deeper lows, having windier, transitional seasons might just become a more typical thing.
Be tough on Emily with the hair. With my hair, it doesn't really matter.
It has been a tough season for me, I will say.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get a higher hair budget, which for me is pretty close to zero as well.
Yeah.
And so let's pivot away then from that, and we'll kind of put spring sort of in the rearview mirror as we kind of count down the days here to summer. Looking ahead with the Climate Prediction Center, from what I can see for their June, July, August outlook, it's going to be cranking up the heat again. So maybe we shouldn't wish away this cool too soon. But I'm looking forward to it. Why don't we go back the other way this time? We'll start in Detroit, Rich. What's the plan going ahead for summer for you? It looks pretty
I'm
hot.
going to bring up something. Last Friday, the day after we had the tornadoes, we had them late Thursday night. Then the following day, Friday, I got invited to go out on Lake St. Clair for a boat ride. And it was 84 degrees and sunny. It was breezy out there, but the sun, when you're on the water, it's powerful stuff. And then the following day, this past Saturday, I got invited to go to a lacrosse match. And it was cold. I mean, I had my Lions tassel cap on. I had 2 sweatshirts on. With the wind, it felt like it was in the 40s. So again, it's not unique to Michigan. It's that Great Lakes thing. One day it can be very summer-like, and literally within 12 or 24 hours, it can be 2 seasons change in a very short time. So we had that Friday into Saturday. But moving forward, people are just thirsting for nice, warm, dry stretches. So when it turns out that way, and it's cool now, today we're stuck in the lower 50s, but next week or perhaps the week after into early June, we're going to get more summer-like weather and everyone will be happy. Everyone will be happy. Watch this.
I think it's the power of suggestion. Yeah, I think that works
Yes.
pretty well. I mean, so here's the thing. Everyone will be happy for the first little stretch of heat. And I mean, same here in Milwaukee and the southern portions of Wisconsin. We had a week of 70s and 80s, and now we're following that up with a week of like 40s and 50s. So it is spring in this region. But when that heat hits, and it starts to get week after week after week, that's when the happy goes to grumpy in a hurry, particularly in, the big city sweat of Chicago.
Yeah, that's right. So, we're a very happy medium type place. I would say that most people here, we love it when it's in like the upper 60s to like upper 70s. That's our sweet spot where you can sit outside at all the restaurants. You're comfortable. You're not cold, but you're not sweating. And, when I'm walking around, you see all of the restaurants trying to set up in these small little windows that we have of the nicer weather. But oftentimes this spring, we haven't gotten a full day of really nice warm temperatures because we get that lake breeze to come in. So, of course, the waters of Lake Michigan, it's still really cool. So, we might start off in the morning and have temperatures climbing through the 60s into the 70s, but then we're very quickly dropping into the 50s. And it's, as a meteorologist, you just want to stop and like tell everybody along the way, like, hey, don't bother putting these tables out. But we're waiting for the nice weather. Everyone that lives here, you really live for the short summers
Yeah.
because there's so much to do, and there is a lot to do outdoors. It's just a little more enjoyable in the summertime. So, we're really looking forward to a warm up. The next week and a half around here, we're still expected to be a little ways below average. So our normals now sit in the low 50s for lows, low 70s for highs, and we're really not expected to be in the 70s until the end of next week. So going into the month of June is when things are, hopefully going to warm up and stay warm around here.
Look at the Climate Prediction Center, monthly is going out, the seasonal outlooks. It does kind of keep things on the hotter side for all of our regions and drier side as well. So, Ian, we might all come up by you just to get away from some of the heat.
Well, if you come, there's always lots to do because everyone evacuates the city on the weekends. It's the land of 10,000 plus lakes. And if you ever want to go to a restaurant or a movie or a show or anything, the summer weekends, you can do whatever you want in the city. There's no traffic, there's no anything. But an interesting note when Emily, you're talking about that sweet spot. A long time ago, I was on the air in the 90s, and Rob, you'll know in Edmonton, Canada. And it was searing hot for Edmonton. It was in the low 90s, not a lot of humidity. But I went on the air and I said, hey, everyone who's complaining about this high heat, let me just show you. And I had a video of a snowstorm behind me on the green screen. Well, about a week later, for only the second time in recorded weather history, it snowed in August. And my name was mud forever because apparently in some way I had made some voodoo happen and all of a sudden it had snowed. But it is interesting. We're so into these short bursts of heat during the summer, but we're also so apt to complain about it that you forget that it is very, very short lived. And that snow and that cold, it all comes rolling back so quickly. But I would hesitate to guess, and I've said this for many, many years, the reason that most of us live and work in these northern markets are because we love the four seasons. We love the four hard seasons more than, can you imagine living in San Diego? Nothing against San Diego. My mother-in-law lives there. But it's like, it's warm and then you put on a sweater. And through it all, you still mow your lawn. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't
There's a
get
little
it.
fog in the morning and then you go on
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful city. I was at the AMS conference down there, and it's a beautiful city. But you're right. I think there is an appeal, and not just for us weather nerds, if I may use that term, but I think for everybody, right? Like, there's the running joke around here, like when we play the video of the alligator that's ringing the Florida doorbell. Like, this is why we live where the air hurts our face 4 months out of the year. We don't have any alligators ringing our doorbells. It is one of my favorite things. But I gotta say, when that heat gets to a certain point where I hear my AC running nonstop, it definitely hurts my cheap little heart a little bit.
Does anyone else have the problem? My wife loves to have the windows and doors open,
The
even when the
summer,
air conditioner is running 24 hours a day.
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
agree with her. I side with her.
oh, but I don't mind. I mean,
the
I like
cold.
it, but we're letting in the heat and humidity, but we're still running the air conditioner. So the cheap part of me that agrees with Rob, I'm there. But Emily, I love the fresh air in the house. The biggest problem I think with us here in Minneapolis and the upper Midwest is during those hot spells, it doesn't really cool down at night. And the humidity is so oppressive that you've got to make sure things are shut up. Do any of your houses, you get that sweat when you look out on the window first thing in the morning and there's all the condensation because you've got the air conditioning just cranked and it's 90 degrees outside and the dew point is 72. I'm like, there's nothing about this that's good.
Ian, I'm going to tell you something. I live in an older house. I do not have ductwork in my house. So I'm old school. So I open the windows and, on the hottest of nights, I do have an air conditioner in the bedroom that I can close the door and sleep comfortably at night. But I get a few days every year where it gets stuffy in my house and it
Oh,
doesn't
sure.
really bother me. I'm from Pittsburgh and it's warm and muggy in the summer in Pittsburgh. And growing up as a kid, we did not have air conditioning in the house. So it is what it is. It is
I
what it
like that. I like that old school.
is.
I'm just the person,
Yes.
give me AC while I'm getting ready, and then otherwise I don't care if the house is hot.
Okay, so you'll take the heat. All right, we've got maybe another 90 seconds here. And we ended last time just kind of talking about the best things in our areas, and then the spring attractions that we're all excited about. Let's do summer. If we'll go around the horn here and give your one spot that you got to get to that you're looking forward to this summer. Why don't we start in Detroit, good old Rock City?
Detroit Rock City, it's the lakes. We have Lake Huron, Lake St. Clair, the Detroit River, the St. Clair River, Lake Erie. I mean, we got water all over the place. So a summertime thing to do is whether you go canoeing or power boating. One quick thing I want to mention. You mentioned in Chicago the uniqueness of the dust storm. 5 years ago, we had the dam failures up near Saginaw. The Edenville and Sanford dams failed. And in all my years as being a meteorologist, that was the first time that I was a part of, witnessing a dam failure, let alone two dam failures. So very serious. And that was a 5-year anniversary just a few days ago.
So there you go. Sometimes the water is the attraction. Sometimes the water is the problem. I can remember when Lake Delton overflowed. It's a man-made lake here in our area, up by the world famous Wisconsin Dells. And yeah, it was just a fascinating but scary situation for sure. All right, let's go to Chicago. What do we got to do in the summer?
Yeah, of course you have to go to the lake, right? That's what we all say. You got to go to Lake Michigan, but I do have a specific favorite beach. It is Oak Street Beach. That's my favorite. They've got a little like cocktail bar area. You've got volleyball courts, and you're just kind of steps away from shopping if you want to. If you're sick of the sun, you want to go do that. There's restaurants within the walking distance. So that is my favorite Friday activity. You can catch me at the beach every Friday morning, going out there with my daughter in the summertime.
You mentioned cocktails, right? Okay, good. You
Yeah,
had me at cocktails. The rest of the stuff doesn't really matter.
yeah, if you're on the beach, that's almost a rule for me at this point.
Sure.
Very good.
For me, it is the lake, but for a different reason. So, some people know, not everyone knows. Cancer survivor, and since then I started doing Ironman. So, I'm doing 2 Ironmans this coming fall.
Yeah.
And so we, as a team, we go around the state and we open water swim a bunch of freshwater lakes. And there's a whole different perspective when you have a boat escorting you across the lake and you're in the middle of it's like jumping out of a plane. You're in the middle of the lake and you're like, what am I doing out here? Wow, is it ever beautiful? I think what I need to do is go to Emily's neck of the woods so I can swim to shore and go right for a cocktail.
There you go. You can reward yourself after your swim.
Would be a fantastic swim, and I want you to wear a GoPro for the whole thing if you try.
All right.
I love it. All right, well, I'll wrap it up here. Of course, Milwaukee famous for Summerfest, the world's biggest, longest musical festival, and that's one of my go-tos every summer. I love to sit down there, watch some of my favorite '90s bands, and decide whether or not I survived the '90s better than the lead singer of Third Eye Blind or something like that. So that's a go-to. And when I get away from the city, got to get down to Lake Geneva. That place is just right out of a postcard when things start popping down there in the summer. Guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me for our second edition here of the ISO Bar. We'll do it again very, very soon. Have fun back where you're from.